Claire had always stood out in her small rural town. Not because she tried to draw attention, but because attention simply followed her. She was tall, much taller than most women, and even taller than many men. People jokingly called her the Giant Bride, a name she accepted with a smile, even when it wasn't meant kindly. Claire had learned to laugh at the things that once made her insecure. She walked with confidence, spoke with ease, and carried herself like someone who understood her worth. But behind that bold exterior, there were pieces of her heart that were soft, fragile, and deeply hidden. The sun was still rising when Claire arrived at the open fields where her wedding photo shoot was supposed to take place. The morning felt fresh. The sky a soft mix of pale blue and gold. The photographer had chosen this spot because the hills looked beautiful in the early light, and Claire loved the idea of capturing natural moments instead of stiff poses in a studio. She wore a simple white dress for the trial shoot. Nothing fancy, but even then she looked radiant, with her long hair flowing in the gentle breeze. But the photo shoot required one thing: a horse. And the only person nearby who could provide a calm, trained horse was a young cowboy named Ethan. Ethan worked on a ranch that belonged to a family friend of the photographer. He was known in the area as someone who rarely talked, kept his hat tipped low, and spent more time with animals than with people. He was gentle by nature, patient with every creature on the ranch, and kind to anyone he interacted with. But most people called him the shy cowboy. Not to tease him, but because it was simply true. He avoided crowds and always felt awkward around strangers. When the photographer called him early that morning and requested a horse for a bridal shoot, Ethan hesitated. He didn't like being part of events, especially around people he didn't know, but he also didn't want to say no when someone needed help. And the photographer promised that all he had to do was bring the horse and stand aside. So Ethan arrived on his brown mare, Daisy, riding slowly across the open field. Claire was adjusting her dress when she noticed him coming. For a moment, she stood still, watching the cowboy move like he was part of the land itself, quiet, steady, and unaware of his own charm. His hat shaded most of his face, but she could see a softness in the way he held himself. The photographer rushed toward him with equipment bouncing on his shoulder. "Ethan, thank you, man. We need Daisy for a few shots." "Claire, this is Ethan. Claire is our bride." Ethan lifted his hat slightly in greeting but didn't say a word. Claire offered him a bright smile. "Hi, I'm Claire. Thank you for bringing Daisy. She's beautiful." Ethan's cheeks warmed. He nodded once. "She's gentle. Won't give you trouble." His voice was quiet, but warm. Claire sensed that he wasn't unfriendly, just shy. She found it endearing, something about him reminding her of a peaceful morning after a long storm. He didn't try to impress anyone. Didn't pretend to be more confident than he was. He simply existed with sincerity. The photographer set things up quickly. Claire was supposed to stand beside Daisy, hold her mane softly, and laugh naturally, as if she were having the time of her life. The idea seemed simple, but Claire wasn't used to horses. She kept stepping back whenever Daisy moved. At one point, Daisy took a step forward, and Claire jumped slightly. Ethan stepped in, holding the horse steady with one hand. "She's just checking the ground," he explained gently. "She can sense when someone is nervous. Just breathe slow." Claire let out a nervous laugh. "It's my first time this close to a horse, so I guess she can smell my fear." Ethan looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw his eyes clearly brown, calm, and unexpectedly comforting. "She won't hurt you," he said softly. "Just trust her weight. She's steady." There was something in Ethan's voice that eased her tension. Claire took a deeper breath and placed her hand carefully on Daisy's neck. The horse relaxed a little, and Claire smiled proudly as if she had accomplished something big. The photographer clapped his hands. "Perfect. Stay like that. Ethan, can you move a little closer? Just in case." Ethan hesitated but stepped closer to hold Daisy's reins. Claire glanced at him and noticed he kept his eyes mostly on the ground, or the horse. He didn't look at her directly for too long. She figured he was simply shy. But to her surprise, She found herself wanting him to feel comfortable around her. The shoot went on, but the weather suddenly changed. Clouds rolled in faster than expected, and a strong wind blew across the field. Claire's dress fluttered wildly, her hair flying in every direction. She tried to hold her balance, but one strong gust nearly made her stumble. Ethan reacted instantly, reaching out and catching her arm lightly before she fell. "Careful," he whispered. Claire laughed breathlessly. "Thank you. Seems like today wants to test me." The photographer moved quickly, trying to grab his equipment before it fell. "We'll need to stay longer. The light will be better once the clouds settle." "Ethan, can you stay with us?" Ethan got quiet. His schedule was simple. Take care of the ranch horses, help with feeding, keep the barn in order. Staying meant delaying his work. But he looked at Daisy, and then at Claire. He saw her trying to hold her dress down while securing her hair, and felt an unexpected sense of responsibility. "Yeah," he said softly. "I can stay." Claire smiled at him again, this time with gratitude. She didn't know why, but his presence made her feel safer, steadier, like the ground beneath her feet wasn't shifting anymore even though the wind kept blowing. As they waited for the weather to calm, they found themselves standing near the fence. For a while, neither spoke. But Claire wasn't the kind of person who stayed quiet for too long. "You don't talk much, do you?" she asked playfully. Ethan looked down, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Not really." "Why? You seem like someone who has interesting things to say." He shrugged lightly. "I just don't say much unless something needs saying." Claire laughed softly. "Well, I think you should talk more. Your voice is nice, calming." Ethan's ears warmed again, and he quickly turned his face toward Daisy to hide it. Claire noticed but pretended not to. She didn't want to embarrass him, only to understand him. The photographer finally called them back for more photos, and the three worked together for the next hour. During the session, Claire and Ethan exchanged small moments, quick glances, shared smiles, and tiny interactions that neither expected. Even though they had only just met, there was something natural about the way they fit into the same space, like two people whose paths were never meant to cross but somehow aligned perfectly. Ethan admired her courage. She wasn't afraid to laugh at herself, wasn't ashamed of being tall, and didn't try to hide her personality. Claire admired his quiet strength. He didn't try to stand out, yet his presence felt important in a way she couldn't explain. By the time the photographer announced a short break, something had changed, something small but important. Claire no longer felt nervous around the horse, and Ethan no longer felt as uncomfortable around Claire. It wasn't friendship yet, not something that could be named so easily. Instead, it was the beginning of a connection neither of them expected, but both secretly welcomed. And though neither knew it yet, this simple morning born from a photo shoot, a horse, and a shy cowboy, was the start of something unforgettable. Claire returned to the field the next day wearing the same oversized denim jacket she always wore, even in warm weather. It was a light blue jacket, a little faded, with small patches on the sleeves, and a worn collar that showed years of use. Most people thought she wore it because she liked the style, but the truth was something much deeper. The jacket was a gift from her father, the last thing he ever bought her before he passed away years earlier. Since then, Claire almost never took it off around others. It made her feel safe, covered, and less exposed to the world. When she arrived at the ranch for the second round of photographs, Ethan was already there brushing Daisy. He looked peaceful, moving slowly as he ran the brush through the horse's coat. Claire watched him for a moment before walking over, her jacket hanging loosely around her shoulders. Ethan noticed her approaching and gave a small nod. "You came early," he said quietly. Claire grinned. "I didn't want to repeat yesterday's wind disaster." Ethan chuckled softly, the kind of laugh that felt like a warm breeze. He rarely laughed openly, but something about Claire made him feel a little more relaxed. She had a way of filling silence without making it heavy, and Ethan appreciated that. As they waited for the photographer, Claire leaned against the fence and watched Ethan work. He moved with care and a quiet confidence, as if every gesture had meaning. She found herself studying him without realizing it, his steady hands, the way his hair curled slightly at the back under his hat, the peaceful expression he wore when focusing on something he cared about. She pulled her jacket closer around her. It was almost a habit. Something she did whenever she felt her emotions getting too close to the surface. Ethan glanced at her jacket for a moment. He had noticed it yesterday too. Claire wore it even when the sun was bright and the air was warm. At first, he thought it was just her favorite piece of clothing, but the way she held it, almost protectively, made him wonder if there was more to it. "You wear that jacket a lot," he said gently. Claire froze for a second. It was a simple comment, but it touched one of the places she kept guarded. She forced a small smile. "Oh, this?" she said casually. "Yeah, I guess I do." "You like it," Ethan said, finishing her sentence. She nodded. Something like that. He didn't push her to explain, and she appreciated that more than he knew. Many people tried to dig into her reasons, asking questions she wasn't ready to answer. But Ethan wasn't like them. He noticed things quietly and respected the space around them. The photographer finally arrived with bags full of equipment. "Good. Both of you are here. Today, we're trying more natural, candid shots." He paused and looked at Claire's jacket. "Maybe later we'll try a few without." Claire stiffened before he even finished. The photographer quickly corrected himself. "Only if you're comfortable. No pressure." She nodded politely, but she could feel her heart beating too fast. The jacket felt heavier on her shoulders, as if holding all her memories at once. Ethan sensed the change in her instantly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you don't want to take it off, you don't have to." Claire looked at him uncertainly. "It's not that simple." He didn't say anything else. He just stood beside her, giving her presence instead of pressure. Sometimes silence was more comforting than words. And Ethan's silence was exactly that: gentle, understanding, patient. As the shoot began, the light was perfect. The sun wasn't too harsh. Clouds gave shade, and the breeze felt calm. Claire posed beside Daisy again. But today, she was more relaxed. Ethan stayed near, holding the reins, but also keeping an eye on Claire. She smiled naturally whenever he was close, without even realizing she was doing it. At one point, the photographer suggested a walking shot, Claire leading Daisy through the field, with Ethan a few steps behind. Claire hesitated. She had never led a horse before. Ethan noticed her worry. He stepped beside her and placed Daisy's rope gently into her hand. His fingers brushed hers lightly. It was a soft, natural touch. But Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Just walk slowly," he said. "She'll follow your pace." Claire took a step. Daisy followed. Claire took another step, this time smiling. Ethan watched her with quiet pride. "You're getting the hang of it," he said. Claire laughed. "Maybe I should become a cowboy too." Ethan looked at her sincerely. "You'd be good at it." She felt a small flutter in her stomach at his compliment. It wasn't romantic, it was the kind of feeling that came when someone believed in you more than you believed in yourself. The photographer snapped photo after photo, capturing small, genuine moments, Claire laughing, Ethan adjusting Daisy's bridle, the two of them sharing small looks they didn't even realize they were giving. After an hour, they took a break again. Claire sat on a wooden bench, her jacket still wrapped around her, even though the sun had warmed the field. Ethan sat a few feet away, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "You don't like taking that jacket off, do you?" he asked softly, not prying, just observing. Claire looked down at her hands. She didn't answer for a long time. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "It belonged to my dad." Ethan nodded slowly. He didn't react with surprise or sadness. He simply accepted her answer with gentle respect. "When did he?" he asked carefully, not wanting to push too far. "A few years ago," she said. "He was my best friend. And this jacket," she clutched the fabric lightly, "it makes me feel like he's still around." Ethan looked at her jacket with new understanding. "Makes sense," he said. "Some things feel like part of us." Claire exhaled softly. She appreciated that he didn't say something dramatic or overly emotional. He didn't turn her pain into a moment. He just understood it, quietly. "Thanks," she said, "for not making it weird." Ethan shook his head. "It's not weird. It's important." Claire felt something shift inside her. She had told people about the jacket before, but no one had reacted like Ethan. His response didn't make her want to hide. It made her feel lighter. They were called back for more photographs. This time, the photographer wanted shots of Claire walking between the tall grass. Sunlight behind her. Jacket still on but open at the front. Ethan walked with her to the spot, and halfway there, Daisy nudged Claire's shoulder playfully. Claire burst into laughter. A natural, joyful sound that made Ethan smile without hiding it. "You're more relaxed today," Ethan said. Claire nodded. "I guess it's easier when you're around." Ethan looked down, surprised by her honesty. Claire didn't even realize what she had said until she saw him shyly adjusting his hat. The sight made her giggle softly. They continued the shoot until the sky started to shift toward late afternoon. The light softened, painting everything with a warm, golden glow. The field looked magical, peaceful, and almost unreal. As the photographer checked the last pictures, he suddenly said, "Oh, before we finish, I want to try a close-up. Claire, maybe you could take off the jacket for just one small shot?" Claire froze again. Ethan immediately stepped forward. "She doesn't have to." The photographer blinked, confused but respectful. "Of course. Only if she wants." Claire pressed her lips together. The jacket felt heavier than ever. She wasn't ready. "Not yet. Not like this." But she looked at Ethan. His eyes were calm, supportive, steady. He didn't push her. He didn't expect anything. He simply stood there, silently letting her know he'd stand by her either way. Claire shook her head slowly. "Not today." Ethan nodded, and the photographer moved on. As they packed up, Claire felt something inside her open, not fully, but enough to let a little air into the corners she usually kept locked. Ethan had seen her insecurity, understood it, and didn't judge her. That meant more to her than he would ever know. The sun dipped lower, painting long shadows across the field. Claire turned to Ethan before leaving. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being kind," she replied. "And for not asking me to be someone I'm not." Ethan looked at her with gentle honesty. "You're fine the way you are." Claire felt something warm settle inside her heart. She didn't know what it was yet, but she knew one thing for sure. She trusted him. And that trust was the beginning of something neither of them understood but both of them felt. The sky had turned a soft orange when the photographer suggested they try one last set of pictures. The light was perfect, the field calm, and the air carried a quiet warmth that made everything feel softer. Claire and Ethan were standing near the old wooden fence where they had spent most of their breaks, a place that already felt familiar to both of them. Claire's denim jacket rested comfortably on her shoulders, the sleeves hanging slightly past her hands the way they always did. The photographer looked at her carefully. "Claire, I want to try a very emotional shot. Something simple, something true. Would you be comfortable removing your jacket? Only if you want to." The moment he said it, Claire felt her breath catch. Even though he had asked gently, the request felt heavier today. The jacket didn't just cover her, it protected her, held her memories, held parts of her heart she wasn't ready to show to the world. She had worn it through good days and bad ones, and sometimes it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. She looked down at the jacket, running her fingers over the fabric. She didn't want to disappoint the photographer, but she also didn't want to lose the comfort she needed. Her father's memory lived in that jacket, woven into every thread. It wasn't just clothing, it was a shield. Ethan sensed the tension in her even before she looked up. He stepped closer, not touching her, but creating a calm presence beside her. "You don't have to," he said softly. "It's your choice." His voice was quiet but steady, a gentle anchor in the middle of her storm. Claire looked at him. trying to read his expression. There was no pressure in his eyes, no expectation, just understanding, and that was what made her heart ache a little. Sometimes, people made her feel like she had to be brave for them, but Ethan was telling her it was okay to be herself. The photographer waited patiently, adjusting his camera as if giving her time to think. Claire swallowed, trying to calm the nervous flutter in her chest. She lifted her hands to the zipper of the jacket, but then stopped midway, her fingers trembling slightly. The air felt too open, too close. Ethan noticed, and leaned toward her just a little. "It's all right," he said. "You don't owe anyone anything." Claire took a slow breath. She knew he was right. But something inside her had changed over the past few days. She had grown comfortable around him. More than she had expected. She had shared pieces of her story with him, and he had held them gently, like fragile glass. And now, standing beside him, she felt a strange mix of fear and courage. She looked at him again, really looked, and found quiet strength in his eyes. He wasn't just a shy cowboy anymore. He was someone who saw her, not the tall woman people joked about, not the bold bride-to-be who pretended she wasn't scared, but the real her, the vulnerable her. "Ethan," she whispered, "do you think I'm ready?" He didn't hesitate. "I think you're braver than you think. And I'll be right here. Also ignateroso. Also ignateroso. You're marked and sees is etched. Also ignateroso." His words settled in her heart like a warm blanket. She looked at the jacket one more time. The wind tugged softly at its edges, almost as if giving her its own silent encouragement. Her father had always told her that courage didn't mean not being afraid, it meant doing something even when fear tried to stop you. She remembered his voice, gentle but strong, the way he used to pull the jacket over her shoulders when she felt lost. Maybe he would have wanted this moment too, not for the photos, but for her own growth. Claire slowly slid her fingers under the collar and took a steady breath. "Just for tonight," she whispered, mostly to herself, but loud enough for Ethan to hear. "I'll take it off." She didn't say it dramatically. She didn't say it with confidence. She said it with honesty, the kind that comes from deep inside. Ethan's expression softened. He stepped slightly behind her. Not to see the moment, but to give her quiet protection. It felt like he was guarding her heart without even touching her. Claire slipped her right arm out of the sleeve first. Her hand shook a little, but she didn't stop. Then she slipped out her left arm. The jacket fell into her hands. Light, but full of years of memories. She held it close for a second before folding it gently and resting it on the fence. The air touched her arms, and she felt strangely exposed. Her white dress, simple and soft, revealed more of her than she was used to. Her emotions. Her real self. For a moment, she felt uncertain, almost wanting to put the jacket back on. But then she saw Ethan. He wasn't looking at her dress. He wasn't looking at her arms. He was looking at her face, his eyes calm and steady, full of respect. "You look like yourself," he said quietly. Not hiding. "Just you." Claire smiled. A small, fragile smile, but a true one. The photographer lifted his camera but moved slowly, as if he too understood that this wasn't just another pose, it was a moment. "Whenever you're ready," he said. Claire faced the camera, but her eyes kept drifting toward Ethan for reassurance. He nodded softly, and she felt something inside her relax. She let her shoulders fall naturally, her posture open, her expression honest. The photographer captured the moment, the soft light catching her features, the slight shine in her eyes, the understanding between her and Ethan reflected in her calmness. It was a picture of courage, not loud, not bold, but gentle and real. After the final click of the camera, Claire exhaled, releasing a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She felt lighter somehow, as if removing the jacket had also removed a small weight she had carried for too long. She wasn't sure if she was ready to let it go forever. But tonight, she had taken a step she had never taken before. She walked back to the fence and picked up the jacket. Her fingers brushed over the familiar fabric. And for a second, she closed her eyes. It still felt like her father. It still felt safe. But now, it didn't feel like the only thing keeping her steady. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was standing beside her, waiting quietly. "You did good," he said. She smiled. "Only because you were here." Ethan shook his head softly. "You did it yourself. I just stood close." They both laughed quietly at that, the sound warm and shared. The field around them had grown dimmer, the sky deepening into gentle shades of purple and pink. The wind felt cooler now, brushing softly against their faces. The photographer busied himself with packing up equipment, giving them space without saying it. Claire slipped the jacket back over her shoulders. It still felt comforting, but not as heavy as before. Ethan handed her a water bottle. She took it and sat down on the fence, resting for a moment. He stood beside her, hands resting gently on Daisy's reins. "You know," Claire said softly, "I haven't taken this jacket off in front of anyone in years." Ethan nodded. "I'm glad you trusted yourself today." She looked at him carefully. "And maybe trusted you too." He turned his eyes away for a moment, embarrassed but touched. The sun slid further down, leaving streaks of color behind it. The photographer finally waved goodbye and headed to his truck. But Claire and Ethan didn't move right away. They stayed by the fence, talking about small things, how Daisy reacted to strangers, how Claire had once tried to learn guitar unsuccessfully, how Ethan had always found peace in open spaces. Everything felt natural between them, as if the silence and the words came from the same soft place. The moments passed without rush, without expectation, without pretending. The night that followed wasn't unforgettable because of anything dramatic. It was unforgettable because it was honest. Because Claire had taken off more than a jacket, she had taken off the weight of hiding, and Ethan had been the quiet, steady presence she needed to take that step. Little did they know, by the time she put her jacket back on, something inside her had changed forever. Claire woke early the next morning, long before the sun had climbed over the hills. She sat at the edge of her bed, holding her denim jacket in her hands. She traced her fingers over the stitching the way she always did when her thoughts felt too loud. But today, something felt different. Last night had changed her. Not in a dramatic, unbelievable way, but in a quiet, steady way that settled deep inside her heart. She had taken off the jacket. She had stood in the open field with her fears exposed and her heart trembling. And she had not fallen apart. She had not run. She had not cried. Instead, she had faced the moment with courage she didn't know she had. And part of that courage came from Ethan, the shy cowboy who stood beside her even when he didn't say a word. Claire slipped on the jacket, not because she needed to hide again, but because it still comforted her. But the feeling was softer now, less like a shield and more like a reminder. She looked at herself in the small mirror near her window and saw something new in her reflection. She didn't look braver. She didn't look different. But she felt different. She felt stronger. She stepped outside. The morning air was cool and filled with the smell of dew on the grass. Birds were just beginning to sing as she walked toward the ranch. The photographer had asked her to return for the final selection of pictures, but she knew her real reason for going wasn't the photos. Her real reason had brown eyes and a quiet voice, and he had waited for her in ways he didn't even realize. When she reached the ranch, Ethan was already there, feeding Daisy. He moved slowly, lost in thought. When he heard her footsteps, he lifted his head and gave her a small, shy smile. "You came early," he said. Claire smiled back. "I learned that from someone." He brushed the horse one last time and then wiped his hands on his jeans. There was something different about him too. He looked peaceful, but also thoughtful, as if he had spent the night replaying moments he didn't expect to matter as much as they did. "You okay?" he asked gently. Claire nodded. More than okay. They stood quietly for a moment, the air between them comfortable. For once, Claire didn't feel like she needed to fill the silence. Ethan's presence made everything slow down in the best way. The photographer arrived soon after and invited them inside the barn to look through the photos. There were hundreds of shots, Claire laughing, Ethan leading Daisy, the golden sunset behind them. The moment Claire walked with her jacket still off, her expression gentle and honest. The photos were beautiful, but what caught Claire's attention were the ones where her eyes naturally drifted toward Ethan. She hadn't noticed it in the moment, but looking at the pictures now, she saw it clearly. She wasn't just comfortable around him, she was drawn to him. The photographer kept praising their natural connection, unaware of the way both Claire and Ethan glanced awkwardly at each other each time he said it. After choosing the final few pictures, he left them to talk alone. Claire picked up one of the photos, the one where she was standing without her jacket for the first time. She looked calm. Her shoulders relaxed. A small smile on her lips. She looked like someone who had stopped running. "I didn't know I could look like this," she whispered. Ethan stepped beside her. "That's how you always look." She turned to him, surprised. "You think so?" He nodded slowly. You don't hide as much as you think. Even when you wear the jacket. Your eyes tell everything." Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. Ethan wasn't always confident with words, but when he spoke with honesty, his words carried weight. They walked outside together, not in a hurry to go home. The sky was brightening, and the soft light made the field glow with a gentle warmth. Claire stopped near the fence where so many of their moments had unfolded. She leaned on it, her jacket brushing against the wood. "You know," she began gently, "yesterday was really hard for me. But you being there, it made it easier." Ethan looked down at the ground, tracing circles in the soil with the heel of his boot. "I didn't do anything." "You were there," Claire said. "Sometimes that's everything." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and she saw something in them, something he hadn't said out loud yet. Something unsure, but real. Ethan cleared his throat. I'm glad I could help." She smiled softly. "Ethan, you helped more than you know." They stood silently again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken feelings. Soft but strong, waiting to be understood. After a moment, Ethan spoke, his voice low but clear. "You know, I don't really talk to people. Not much. They make me nervous." Claire listened closely, sensing that he was opening up in a way he rarely did. "But with you," he added slowly, "it feels easier." Claire's eyes softened. She didn't rush to respond. She let his words settle between them. "I feel the same," she said. "You make me feel safe. I don't know how, but you do." Ethan took a slow breath. Maybe we're both good for each other." Claire felt a gentle flutter inside her chest. She didn't know what their connection meant yet, but she knew it was real. She knew it mattered. The field around them was quiet. Daisy grazed nearby, the soft sound of her footsteps blending with the rustle of the wind. A passing breeze lifted Claire's hair, and she pushed it behind her ear. Ethan watched her with that same shy, warm expression he always had. Claire looked down at her jacket. She held the edges lightly and spoke in a soft voice. "You know, last night, when I said just for tonight, I'll take it off. I think it meant more than I realized." Ethan waited, patient and steady. "It wasn't just the jacket," Claire continued. "I think I took off a little of my fear too. And I don't think I could have done that without you." Our cue. Ethan's breath caught slightly, but he stayed quiet, letting her finish. Claire turned fully toward him, her heart calm for the first time in a long time. "I don't know what happens next. I don't know where life takes both of us. But I'd like to spend more time with you. Not because of the photos, not because of yesterday, but because you bring out a side of me I didn't know I still had." Ethan's cheeks warmed, but he didn't look away. He met her eyes with gentle courage. "I'd like that," he said softly. "A lot." They didn't move closer. They didn't hold hands. They didn't rush the moment. They simply stood there, two people learning to trust themselves and each other. The sun rose higher, warming the field. Birds flew overhead. And for the first time, Claire felt like the world wasn't too big for her. and Ethan felt like he wasn't too small for it. They walked side by side toward the ranch gate, their steps matching naturally. Claire looked at Ethan and smiled. "So, what do we do now?" "See. What? What do we do now?" Ethan tilted his hat slightly. "Maybe we start with breakfast." Claire laughed, warm and genuine. "That sounds perfect." And as they walked together, the shy cowboy and the tall bride who carried her father's jacket knew something quiet but powerful had begun. Not with fireworks, not with grand promises, but with understanding, trust, and the courage to stand together in the softness of an unforgettable night.